Let me invite you today to the eastern Usambara Mountains in Tanzania, the real chameleon paradise. Come with me to experience the jungle at daytime and in the night. In eastern Usambara Mountains, the mountains are always covered in clouds. This is around noon, and you see everything is in clouds and in fog. Here in the eastern Usambara Mountains, a high level of endemism have evolved, including chameleons. Some of the species you can find only here and nowhere else in the world. Look at the miracle of creation. These are the tiny leaf chameleons, two species. In my right hand, it's the forest dweller and endemics of the eastern Usambara Mountains, Rhampholeon temporalis. It lives only here as one of the few chameleon species, which is actually really a forest species. It cannot survive outside of the forest. And on my left hand, there is a relatively widespread species living in Kenya and Tanzania around many mountains, which is called Rieppeleon brevicaudatus, the short tail or the beaded leaf chameleon of Eastern Africa. Both species are quite tiny. They reproduce with eggs. They lay few eggs, like 2 to maximum 5 eggs. And imagine how tiny can be the babies if these are the fully grown adult specimen. Enjoy the view of these beautiful little dragons of the rainforest. Look at these tiny little chameleons. These are the endemics of the eastern Usambara Mountains, Rhampholeon temporalis. They do not live anywhere else in the world, just here. This tiny one is a female and this one is a male. You can tell it based on their general shape, but basically the female has a very short tail and the male has a tail which is thickened significantly at the tail base. These little chameleons live deep in the forest and they do not climb too much high. They climb maximum to 1 meter or 1.5 meters high. Otherwise they live in the undergrowth of the rainforest. This species is one of the very few examples of chameleons living in the forest, because most of the other species are more confined to the forest edge or to the more open areas, despite of the fact that they have a close relationship to the forest. These little devils, they feed on small invertebrates, including springtails, small insects, small flying insects, and they reproduce in having 2 to 5 tiny eggs, from which babies hatch, which are this size only. This is a tiny representative of the stump-tail chameleons, Rhampholeon temporalis. It has a very strange behavior. If you touch it or if a predator grasps it, it buzzes. So if you touch it here like this with the fingers, it gives a very tiny sound like a buzz of a small insect, like a bee. Sometimes they fall in the state of so-called akinesis. They do not move and they pretend to be dead, like a piece of a leaf or branch, so that the predator thinks it is not edible. This is the typical montane forest in eastern Usambara Mountains. Here in this thick undergrowth, if you are lucky, you can find a very spectacular leaf chameleon, Rhampholeon temporalis. This is a female, and they tend to live in pairs, so the male will not be far. Here we go. This is a male of the same species. A strict inhabitant of the forest, living in the same place as the three-horned Usambara chameleon. They just live a little bit higher, because these tiny leaf chameleons live here in this thick undergrowth, while a little bit higher you can find the three-horned chameleons or the two-horned blade horn chameleons, Kinyongia machiei. The eastern Usambara Mountains. I'm trying to find some of the kings of this rainforest, which is the three-horned Usambara chameleon. Let us see whether we will be lucky. They can be everywhere, from half meter up to the canopies of these high trees. But we seem to be quite lucky. There is one sitting right there. Let us see. A wonderful female of the three-horned Usambara chameleon called Trioceros deremensis. A wonderful specimen. Adult female, still a young one, not still reached the final size, but a wonderful find. It's a real joy to find these wonderful chameleons in the forest, in the wild, in the undisturbed home country, and it is fine to take some few pictures, take some measurements, and then release them back where they belong to. Let's do it. Lucky to see a female. Let us see whether we can find a male. As you can see, the vegetation is quite dense. You need lots of training to find a chameleon in this undergrowth. But the population here is really quite dense and quite nice. And oh yes, we are lucky. There is a male here. It is a small male over there. Come here. Let us see him. Right there, a small male of the eastern Usambara three-horned chameleon, Trioceros deremensis, is sitting here, watching us and making the leaf walk to escape our attention, because we are predators to him. Fantastic male. And a fantastic encounter. It is a fantastic joy to find new life. This is a freshly hatched Trioceros deremensis in the East Usambara Mountains. Look at this tiny boy. It is a miniature of the great parents, which are much bigger than this tiny Usambara three-horned chameleon Trioceros deremensis. Here you can see why the three-horned chameleon has this strange color pattern and the bluish coloration. This one does not cooperate now nicely, but normally they are blue color that starts to appear now at the back, and they resemble with their color the color of the lichens, which are very frequently found on the branches they crawl on. This way they escape the view and attention of the predators and are not eaten by them. We were quite lucky here in the Eastern Usambara Mountains because we have found a specimen of my beloved species, the monkey-tailed two-horned blade chameleon from Usambara Mountains, Chameleon machiei. It is sitting right there. It is not easy to see it. Can you? Let me take it down for you. Come here to see it. It's right here. A fantastic male of one of the most beautiful chameleon species in the world, Chameleon machiei, an adult male. They're quite calm. They usually are not so much afraid of people, and sometimes they jump down to save their lives. But this guy is quite okay. I think he will crawl on my hand alone, and then I will show you his beauty. Fantastic specimen, what do you say? Wow. Okay, here we go. A fantastic species. Here you can see why this species is actually called the monkey-tailed chameleon, because Chameleonia as a genus have usually very long tails, but look that size of that tail and this wonderful male. They have a very fine texture of their skin and two long cranial horns and big casque, one of the most impressive species of this forest. It does not do so well in captivity for one reason only. People do not respect their conditions, so that many specimens have been actually imported to United States and to Europe. But if you do not provide them the conditions that are typical for this rainforest, it means at the daytime quite mild temperatures, only around 21 to 23, maximum 25 degrees Celsius, and at the night time the temperatures drop to 14 even to 12 degrees Celsius, and the air humidity is 100%, because we are at the elevation of 1000 meters. It means that we get at the night the clouds to come down and build fog throughout the entire forest. Enjoy the view of the most beautiful chameleon, in my opinion, of Tanzania, the two-horned, blade-horned, monkey-tailed chameleon of Eastern Usambara. This is the East Usambara two-horned monkey-tailed chameleon. Why the name is like that can be shown on this very long, extremely long, curled tail. It is quite impressive. It has two parallel blade-like horns. A fantastic species, endemic just to the Eastern Usambara Mountains. Look the beauty. We have found a quite unusually colored female of the three-horned Usambara chameleon, Trioceros deremensis. Here the female is sitting. It is orange. Look how beautiful it is. Normally, the females, which are hornless, do not possess such a vivid orange color. They tend to have blurry greenish or bluish or brownish colors, so orange specimens like this beauty are quite rare. Enjoy that rare view with me. Enjoy the rainforest of eastern Usambaras. And now look on a miracle, because we shine with the light on her, she becomes darker. But if we turn her to go to the opposite direction, she will expose to us the beautiful orange color that she had before. Look how beautiful she is. So we'll release her here in the rainforest for her to reproduce, to lay the eggs, and to thrive in her habitat, in her home here in the eastern Usambara Mountains. It's interesting to be in the forest in the late afternoon, just before dark. The sun is already down, and every minute becomes darker and darker. And the nightlife starts to sink. This is a flat-necked chameleon, Chameleodilepis. It is a species which is quite widespread in Africa, and it occurs along the equator, south of Sahara, up to southern Republic of Southern Africa. It is a chameleon species which is confined mostly to savanna. So it is quite interesting that we find it here in Amani, around about 1,000 meters high. This species is quite small here, and it penetrates the area only along the roads and along the plantations. It does not penetrate the forest, so it lives here only in areas which are quite hot and dry, and do not enter the cold and moist forest here around. This is a wonderful male, as you can see based on the hemipeneal bulges here, and the flat-necked chameleon is very well known for his occipital flaps right here, that when he is angry, which we will not do, he can avert and make the head looking quite big, like if it was an elephant. Enjoy. If you search for chameleons at night, you might get a view like this. Very far behind the creek, a male of Kinyongia machiei. And high up in the tree here, you can see a female of the same species. When you search for a chameleon at night, you need to search with a flashlight. And if you are lucky, down there you can see a shining spot. It is a chameleon. This one is a huge adult male of the eastern Usambara monkey-tail blade-horned chameleon Kinyongia machii. It is not as easy to find them as it looks like. Searching for chameleons at night is quite an adventure. You walk for kilometers and kilometers, watch through lots of trees and bushes, and if you are lucky, a sight like this opens in front of your eyes and you find a beautiful chameleon like this one, which is the flapneck chameleon, Chameleon here in Amani in the East Usambara Mountains. A fantastic night hunt. Here there is a baby of the flapneck chameleon, and not far from here, just a little bit further, we can see the soft-horned chameleon of eastern Usambaras, Kinyongia tenuis. This is the spiny chameleon, Rhampholeon spinosus, a very strange animal that has a flexible rostral process, and it lives only in Tanzania in the Usambara Mountains. It is more known from the western Usambara Mountains, but this specimen is from the eastern Usambara Mountains, from one very special forest here. This is a female of Trioceros deremensis, and you can see a structure in the angle of the mouth, this one, with the black coloration, the black pigmentation made by melanin. This is the so-called temporal pouch. Chameleons have this spectacular gland, which is called temporal gland, to attract flies with the smelly substance which is produced in exactly this gland. And you can see, if they move the head like that, they can even expose the gland to the both sides of the mouth. If you touch it and smell it, it's a quite bad smell, resembling rotten meat. I hope you enjoyed the visiting of this chameleon paradise, and for the next adventures, just stay tuned.